Okay, so we have looked at how populations grow. We've had a small little snippet of how do you determine the size of a population from the rat attack video yesterday, for those of you that were here. And now we're going to look at how can a population be limited? How can we lose animals in an ecosystem, and what effect will that have? Anything that is going to cause a loss to an ecosystem is called a limiting factor. So anything that's going to cause that population to go down, as shown by the picture there, the fox with a squirrel. It's going to lead into one of our first limiting factors. So these limiting factors are put into categories. They are density dependent and density independent. We're going to look at density dependent first, meaning that the limiting factor is based on how many animals are in that ecosystem. So if we have a lot, this limiting factor may cause a greater decline in the population. So anything that is population density related is going to be a dependent limiting factor because it depends on the size of how many animals there are. So let's take a look at some of these because that might put this in better context and help you understand what this means. So we have 4 limiting factors that are density dependent, and none of these should surprise you. Competition for resources, for food, for shelter, for mates. Predation, animals, fortunately, because that's the circle of life, eating other animals. Parasitism, which is separate from disease. Parasitism is animals that are parasites, organisms, I should say, that are parasites that essentially suck the life out of a living thing. Disease is different. Okay, so let's look at these in depth. Competition, this is going to happen when we have animals competing for basic needs. So food, water, sunlight, space. It can also be mates. Note from the pictures, we've got a large density of animals. It's a high density population, so they're all competing for what they need, which is why this is, of no surprise, a density then dependent factor. Predation is also going to be based on the population because the more animals there are, the more predation there's going to be. The fewer animals, then the less predation, but it's kind of a tricky balance. We have something called a predator-prey relationship. Yes, if we have more prey animals, the predators are going to thrive, but only to a point. You'll see from this graph below that the link between the hare and the lynx are connected. As the lynx rises, so will the prey animals because they go in sync. If there's more for them to eat, there's going to be more lynx. As soon as that prey animal declines, so will the lynx. And really, I kind of did that a little bit backwards. The prey will fall after the predator. So here's our predator, he declines, and then shortly after the prey declines. And then because there are less lynx, you'll note that our cycle goes back up. Prey animals increase, and then over time, so will our lynx. This is one of the simulations you're going to be doing today to see the interconnectedness between predator and prey animals because they are dependent on each other, even though one kills the other for food. The great thing about the predator-prey relationship it is a way for us to control our animal population so that they don't get too big. Sometimes they do, and we have to step in as a society and take care of those animals. In Wisconsin, we know that happens with deer. Yes, people enjoy hunting and it provides food, but it is a way for us to control the population because without us stepping in, we would have too many. Wolves, although their population is on the increase, there's just not enough of them to take care of all the deer that we have. Parasitism and disease, these are going to be paired together, but truly parasites are not diseases. Diseases would be things like mad cow disease. The more animals you have, the more likely it is to spread. And the same is true for parasites. Parasites are going to take the life of their host for their own nourishment at the expense of the host itself. They don't want to kill the host because they need them to survive, but sometimes that happens. But they are a separate category. Both intensity dependent because the more animals there are, the more likely this is to happen and to spread within an ecosystem. We'll be looking at parasitism next week when we get into animal relationships. So those are all density dependent. Now we've got our second category of limiting factors, and there are only two, and that is density independent. Anytime we have a factor that happens regardless of how many animals there are. Doesn't matter if there's 2, 10, 5,000, the crazy rat population yesterday, this happens regardless of size. And here are some of those density independent factors. Unusual weather. So think extreme seasonal changes. Right now we have extreme heat, which isn't normal for this time of year for it to be this warm. Natural disasters, so tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, seasonal cycles, just the natural change of summer to fall to winter is going to cause a population to possibly decline or increase, but most likely decrease. And then finally, there's us. We have a huge role on our ecosystems. We know that we damage forests and we deforest. We know that our unfortunate ability to pollute and not recycle our plastics leads to animals eating plastics thinking it's food. So we take a huge toll, probably more than even the other three, on an ecosystem. And all these, it doesn't matter how many there are, these all will destroy an ecosystem, regardless if there's one or a lot. So those are all the different categories, only two, of how an ecosystem can be limited or decline. Density dependent and density independent. So now you're going to go ahead and finish the rest of the form, answer some of these questions, try your hand on what these questions are look like on a test. Here's the information, but how do you apply it? And then you'll complete the two simulations, one showing you the predator-prey relationship in detail, and then the other that's going to give you a little glimpse of what we'll be doing later this week, which is a mark and recapture lab to determine what is the current size of a population if you had to go out and figure out how many deer there are right now to get ready for hunting season.